The first day at the Interstellar Academy was always loud. The gates opened wide, releasing waves of new cadets into the massive courtyard. Ships had arrived from 100 different star systems, each bringing their brightest youth. The air buzzed with excitement and nervous chatter as beings of all shapes and colors moved toward the tall registration towers. Some cadets had wings folded tightly against their backs, some had scales that shimmered under the sunlight, and others walked with metallic limbs built for strength. Their laughter echoed, their voices overlapping in dozens of languages. For them, this day meant honor, a chance to prove themselves in the greatest military academy in the galaxy. Among this crowd walked a girl who looked almost ordinary. No glowing tattoos, no armored skin, no horns or extra limbs. Just 2 legs, 2 arms, and eyes that quietly studied everything around her. She wore the same simple Academy-issued uniform as everyone else, but on her it looked different. Not flashy, not proud, just steady. Some cadets noticed her and whispered. She looked fragile compared to them, almost too soft. One alien muttered, "What world is she from? Looks weak." Another laughed, "Maybe she won't survive the first week." She heard the whispers but ignored them. Her steps remained calm, her breathing even. The registration lines stretched far, and each cadet had to place their hand on the glowing scanner. The machine instantly confirmed their DNA and species, then issued an entry badge. Every scan ended the same way. A blue light, a soft chime, and the robotic voice declaring, "Species verified. Entry granted." Excitement filled the courtyard every time. Cadets cheered, hugged their friends, and stepped forward proudly with their new badges. When her turn came, the chatter slowed. She stepped toward the scanner without hesitation, but the air around her felt heavy. Dozens of eyes followed her. For some reason, her calm face drew attention. She placed her hand flat on the scanner. The surface hummed softly. First, nothing seemed wrong. Then the glow shifted. Instead of blue, the machine flickered red. A sharp alarm burst through the air, echoing off the courtyard walls. Error. DNA rejected. The robotic voice was louder than before, and the words froze everyone in place. Cadets who had been laughing stopped mid-breath. A hush spread through the courtyard. The girl did not move her hand. She just watched as the scanner glitched, its surface flashing between blue and red. It was as if the machine could not process what it was reading. Then, suddenly, letters scrolled across the display, glowing in harsh crimson light. Warning. Species identified. A second alarm screamed, sharper this time. Cadets stepped back, their faces tense. Instructors at the edge of the line turned quickly, moving closer. The words on the scanner grew bolder, filling the entire display. Species. DATHWORLDR. Origin, Earth. The silence that followed was different, heavy, dangerous. It pressed down on the courtyard until even the birds circling above seemed to vanish. Someone whispered, "Did it say? Deathworlder." Another cadet hissed, "Earth? That cursed place? That's not possible. No one survives there." Even the instructors stiffened. One of them, a tall being with 4 golden eyes, stepped forward sharply. "Remove your hand from the device. Step away immediately." The girl slowly withdrew her hand. Her expression did not change. Calm, silent, but her presence filled the space more than before. The officer tapped the scanner, muttering, "Must be a malfunction." He waved for another device. A second scanner was brought forward, sleeker, newer. The girl was told to try again. Once more, she placed her hand down. Once more, the machine scanned. And once more, the glow turned blood red. Species, Deathworlder, Earth. This time the screen added a flashing triangular icon, the universal symbol of extreme danger. Gasps erupted all around. Cadets stumbled back. Some covered their mouths. A few stared at her like she was a weapon about to explode. The officer's voice was tight. Confirmed. Whispers spread like fire. "She's not supposed to be here. They should send her away. Earthborn, dangerous, unstable." The girl finally lifted her head, her calm eyes scanning the crowd. She spoke for the first time, her voice steady, cutting through the whispers. "Is this the academy?" she asked. "Or a place that fears its own students?" No one answered. Even the instructors avoided her gaze. The treaty laws were clear. Once a cadet was chosen and accepted for training, they could not be denied. The scanner had identified her, yes, but it had not disqualified her. Still, the atmosphere had changed. She was no longer just another new face. She was a Deathworlder, a word that carried centuries of fear. She adjusted the strap of her simple bag, her movements calm as if nothing had happened. Without waiting for permission, she walked past the stunned cadets, through the gate, into the academy grounds. Every step echoed on the polished stone floor, louder than the voices behind her. The silence she left in her wake was heavier than the alarms. For the first time in many years, the academy whispered about a new arrival. Not just a cadet, not just a girl. A Deathworlder had entered their ranks. The courtyard felt different after her entry. The laughter and noise that had filled the air in the morning seemed thinner, almost forced. Cadets still walked, still trained, still talked. But every time the Earthborn girl passed, silence followed. She could feel it in their eyes. They looked at her the way prey looks at a predator it cannot fight. Some glanced and then quickly turned away, while others stared openly, their faces twisted with fear or mistrust. Her name was on every tongue, though whispered as if speaking it too loud might call danger closer. Deathworlder. She's from Earth. Why would they allow that? Even the instructors treated her differently. Normally, they barked orders, pushed cadets to their limits, and expected instant obedience. But when it came to her, their voices carried hesitation. They didn't shout her name the way they did with others. Instead, they paused, as if unsure how much pressure they could apply without unleashing something they didn't understand. She noticed all of it. She felt the distance grow wider each day, though she said nothing. The training grounds were alive with activity. Cadets practiced drills in squads of 10, weapons gleaming under the artificial sun. Energy shields flickered, targets exploded into sparks, and shouts of determination filled the air. But when she was assigned to a squad, the reaction was immediate. The others exchanged nervous glances. One cadet with scaled skin hissed under his breath, "Why is she with us?" Another shook his head and muttered, "She'll get us killed." She stood silently in formation, pretending not to hear, but every word pressed against her. Not because it hurt, but because it was predictable. The drill began. The squad was ordered to cross the obstacle field, a brutal stretch of rotating platforms, swinging blades, and simulated plasma fire. Most cadets stumbled, some fell, and others cursed as they scrambled to keep up. She moved differently, her body bent at the right moments, her hands gripped with precision. Her eyes caught every pattern before the traps triggered. She didn't rush, but she didn't struggle either. Where others fought against the obstacles, she seemed to flow through them, like water moving past rocks. Her squad fell behind quickly. By the time she reached the end, only 2 of them were still close. The others lagged far behind, bruised and panting. An instructor marked their scores, shaking his head at the poor results. But when he reached her name, his pen paused. Her score was flawless. The whispers returned. "Did you see that? She didn't even break a sweat. No one moves like that." That night, in the dormitories, the atmosphere grew heavier. Cadets gathered in groups, their voices low but sharp. Her name was at the center of every conversation. "She's dangerous. Deathworlders are unstable. I read the reports. Earth is full of poison and predators. You grow up there, and you come out different. What if she snaps?" One cadet added, "They say humans can survive things that would kill us in minutes. Radiation, toxins, gravity. Even their own planet wants them dead, and still they live." The stories spread like wildfire, half-truths mixed with fear until no one knew what was real. She walked into the dorm hall and every voice cut off. Dozens of eyes turned to her, then away. Some cadets shifted their beds farther, creating more space between them and her. Others simply left. She did not argue. She did not try to explain. She simply sat on her bed, removed her boots, and stared at the ceiling as the silence pressed down. But silence was not weakness. It was patience. The next day, combat drills began. Pairs of cadets were sent into the ring to spar. Most matches ended with clumsy strikes, nervous laughter, or frustrated shouts. But when her name was called, the air tightened again. Her opponent was tall, armored, and eager to prove himself. He grinned at the crowd before facing her. "This won't take long," he said. She didn't answer. The signal blared, and he lunged forward, swinging with speed and power. But she wasn't there. Her body moved before his strike landed, her feet silent on the ground. She twisted, caught his arm, and in a single motion, slammed him onto the floor. Gasps exploded around the ring. The opponent roared in frustration, leaping up and charging again. Once more, she moved faster. A block, a shift, and he was down again, the breath knocked out of him. The instructor called the match. It had lasted less than 30 seconds. The crowd murmured, fear mixing with awe. Her opponent staggered to his feet, his pride shattered. He refused to meet her eyes. She left the ring without a word. That night, the whispers were sharper. Some cadets muttered about requesting transfers away from her squad. Others said she wasn't a cadet at all, but a weapon disguised as one. The instructors, too, debated quietly in their offices. "She's skilled," one admitted, "but the others won't trust her. Fear spreads faster than discipline." Another said, "Fear may be what keeps them alive. Let them see what a Deathworlder truly is." Through it all, she remained calm. She did not rise to the fear, nor try to silence it. Deep inside, she knew the truth. Earth had shaped her in ways none of them could understand. And the Academy was only just beginning to learn the weight of that truth. The Academy grounds were alive with the sound of training. Blades clashed, energy weapons hummed, and cadets shouted orders as squads practiced maneuvers. But no matter where she went, the Earthborn girl felt the weight of eyes on her. The fear had not faded since the scanner revealed her origin. If anything, it had deepened. In every squad she joined, the cadets stood a little farther away. In every meal hall, tables grew strangely empty around her. They didn't speak to her unless they had to, and when they did, their voices carried unease. She noticed. She always noticed, but she gave no sign of care. This week was the first true test of combat teamwork. Each squad was placed in simulated battlefields, forests thick with holographic predators, ruined cities with collapsing walls, or deserts with shifting sands. The goal was simple: work as a team to reach the beacon at the end. Her squad was already nervous. The scaled cadet who had mocked her earlier refused to make eye contact. The tall insectoid cadet clicked his mandibles in frustration, muttering, "We cannot trust her. Deathworlders don't understand teamwork." The instructor's voice thundered across the field. "Begin!" The simulation roared to life. Walls rose around them, smoke filled the air, and the distant growls of artificial beasts echoed. Her squad rushed forward, weapons drawn, their movements frantic and uncoordinated. She followed, calm and measured. Every step was careful. Every glance took in details the others missed. Shadows moving too quickly, the faint shimmer of a trap, the unstable floor just ahead. "Move faster!" the scaled cadet barked. He charged forward, ignoring her warning voice. The ground beneath him cracked, and a trap triggered. Energy bolts fired from the walls, slamming into his shield. He fell to the ground with a scream. The others panicked, returning fire wildly. Their shots bounced uselessly against the reinforced walls. She didn't panic. She leaped forward, rolled into the gap, and hit the reset panel with a sharp strike. The traps powered down instantly. The scaled cadet lay stunned, his armor smoking. The insectoid cadet stared. "How did you see that?" She simply said, "I watched." But instead of thanks, suspicion grew deeper. Whispers rose as they moved forward again. She knew too much. Maybe she caused the trap. No one moves like that. By the time they reached the final beacon, her squad was broken, 2 injured, 1 unconscious, and the rest exhausted. She was the only one standing strong, breathing steady, as if the simulation had barely touched her. The instructors recorded everything. When they announced scores, her squad ranked near the bottom. Yet her personal performance was flawless. The academy took notice. That evening, during hand-to-hand drills, her name was called again. This time, the instructors wanted to see her fight under direct observation. She stepped into the ring, her face unreadable, as a new opponent approached. He was no cadet. He was one of the academy's combat trainers, a veteran with scars across his arms and a cybernetic leg. The crowd went quiet. This was no ordinary test. The trainer gave her a faint smile. Let's see what a Deathworlder can do. The signal sounded. He struck first, fast and heavy, his cybernetic leg kicking with brutal force. Most cadets would have been thrown across the ring. But she twisted aside, her body moving before thought, her instincts sharp. She caught his arm, shifted her weight, and threw him down hard. The crowd gasped. The trainer laughed, rising quickly. Good. Again. They clashed. His strikes were faster, sharper, relentless. She blocked, dodged, countered, her body bending in ways the others had never seen. She wasn't just fighting. She was surviving, as if every move carried the lessons of a world that never forgave mistakes. Minutes passed, but her breathing never broke. The trainer was the one slowing, his movements heavier. Finally, she caught him off balance and swept his legs from under him. He hit the ground, pinned in a lock he could not escape. The silence was complete. Then, slowly, the trainer tapped the ground, signaling surrender. She wins, he said, almost proudly. The cadets stared in disbelief. Some looked at her with awe, but most with deeper fear. No cadet should be able to defeat a trainer. Yet she had. The instructor released her hand, shaking his head. Your instincts, they're beyond training. They're survival. But the cadets whispered again. No one should fight like that. She's not like us. She's dangerous. That night, the dorm was colder than ever. Beds shifted farther. Conversations stopped when she entered. Even those who admired her strength did so quietly, afraid of what it meant. Lying on her bed, she stared at the ceiling, her hands folded behind her head. She could feel their fear pressing in from every corner. It was heavy, unrelenting, and isolating. But deep inside, she also felt something else, a strange clarity. Fear was not new to her. On Earth, fear was a daily companion. Predators, storms, hunger. All of it had shaped her. She had lived with fear long before these cadets even understood the word. If they feared her, then so be it. Fear was power. Fear was survival. And she would carry that weight no matter how heavy it became. The academy library was quiet compared to the training fields. Long rows of glowing shelves stretched high, storing records of every known world, every battle, every species. Most cadets visited only when assignments forced them. But lately, groups had started gathering there on their own, whispering, searching, reading. They weren't looking for strategies or history lessons. They were looking for her. The Earthborn girl had become a mystery that spread through the academy faster than any rumor before. She had beaten the simulations. She had defeated a combat trainer. She moved like danger itself. And still, she never bragged, never explained, never showed fear. So the cadets turned to the archives. One alien cadet pulled a glowing scroll from the shelves. Here, he whispered. Earth. The others crowded around as the holographic text unfolded in the air. The records were old. Many were marked as restricted or incomplete. But even fragments painted a picture that chilled them. High gravity, unpredictable storms, predators on every continent. Diseases that adapt faster than medicine. Oceans with currents strong enough to swallow fleets. The scaled cadet shook his head in disbelief. This planet should not support life. It's a graveyard. Yet the records continued. There were notes of resilience, survival against impossible odds, and a single repeated classification that burned itself into their minds. Deathworld, extreme hazard rating. The insectoid cadet clicked his mandibles nervously. And she grew up there. She's not like us. She's forged by that place. Fear deepened, but alongside it came something else. Respect, though most refused to admit it aloud. Meanwhile, outside the library, the whispers grew louder. In the mess hall, cadets pointed when she walked in. Some shifted away from her table, but others, unable to hide their curiosity, leaned closer to hear her speak. She didn't offer stories, didn't defend herself. She simply ate in silence, her calm presence doing more than words ever could. But rumors filled the silence. They say her people can heal from wounds in days that would cripple us for months. They say humans hunt predators twice their size for food. I heard Earthborn can breathe poison air for hours. Exaggerations mixed with truth, spreading her legend across the academy. The instructors noticed too. Some dismissed it as gossip, but others began to watch her more carefully. During physical drills, one instructor murmured to another, "Look at her stamina. That's not training. That's survival instinct." Another replied, "If she's truly a Deathworlder, we must treat her as more than a cadet. She could be a weapon." The girl herself remained silent. She knew what they said about her. She heard the rumors, the half-truths, the lies, but she let them spread. Every whisper, every fearful glance, every exaggerated tale. It built something she did not need to say herself, a reputation. It grew stronger after the next exercise. This time, squads were dropped into a simulated jungle. The trees towered high, vines swung low, and hidden predators stalked from the shadows. Cadets armed themselves with scanners and rifles, moving carefully through the dense fog. Her squad, however, stumbled again. They panicked at every noise, fired at shadows, and wasted energy shields on harmless traps. She didn't panic. At one point, a predator, a holographic beast with fangs like swords, lunged from the mist. Her squad screamed, scattering. She did not move until the last second. Then, in one sharp motion, she sidestepped, caught its head, and drove it to the ground. The simulation dissolved into sparks around her. Her squad stared in disbelief. That wasn't training, one whispered. That was hunting. By the time they reached the extraction point, the rumors were no longer whispers. They were certainty. She's a Deathworlder. She's dangerous. She's unstoppable. And yet, alongside the fear came something else, dependence. When the squad was lost, they followed her steps. When predators attacked, they hid behind her. They would not admit it aloud, but without her, they would have failed completely. That night, in the dorms, the whispers changed tone. She doesn't need us, but maybe we need her. Her kind is feared, yes, but feared for a reason. Even the instructors noted it in their reports. One file, stamped and sealed, carried a chilling line. Subject, Earthborn cadet. Potential threat or potential asset. The girl sat on her bunk, calm as always. Around her, cadets avoided her eyes, but she could feel the shift in the air. She was no longer invisible, no longer just another new recruit. Her name was spreading. Her reputation was being carved, piece by piece, into the academy walls. Not by her own voice, but by their fear, their awe, their stories. And as she lay back, staring at the ceiling, she wondered quietly, would they ever see her as more than a Deathworlder? For now, it didn't matter, because in the academy's halls, one truth had already taken root. The Deathworlder had a reputation that could not be undone. The academy buzzed with new rumors. Her reputation had already reached every corner of the campus. To some, she was a monster in disguise. To others, she was a living legend. But to the instructors, she was now a test case. So the order was given, a survival challenge. Every year, cadets faced one trial designed to push them to their limits. It was meant to strip away arrogance and show who truly belonged in the academy. But this time, the instructors chose a harsher version. A jungle simulation filled with hidden traps, hostile drones, and predator programs. Each squad would enter with standard gear, and their only goal was simple: survive long enough to reach the extraction point. Whispers filled the hall when the announcement was made. This is because of her. They want to see what a Deathworlder can really do. She'll either prove herself, or she won't come back. When the day arrived, the cadets gathered at the launch bay. Ships waited to drop squads into the simulation zone. The air buzzed with nervous energy. Her squad stood apart, exchanging uneasy glances. None of them spoke to her. The scaled cadet muttered, "If she's with us, maybe we'll survive. Or maybe she'll be the reason we don't." She adjusted the strap of her gear and said nothing. The transport dropped them into the jungle. Thick trees towered overhead, vines twisted around their trunks, and mist clung to the ground. The air felt heavy, almost real, as if they had stepped onto an actual planet instead of a simulation. Almost immediately, the forest came alive. Mechanical predators darted between the shadows, their glowing eyes watching. The squad raised their rifles nervously, scanning every direction. "Stay together," the insectoid cadet hissed. His voice shook. They moved forward slowly, stumbling over roots and branches. Every snap of a twig made them flinch. The fear was thick, pressing into their skin. She, however, walked differently. Calm, silent, every step measured. Her eyes scanned not just the ground but the treetops, the wind, the patterns in the mist. She wasn't looking for enemies. She was reading the forest itself. Hours passed, and their nerves frayed. Drones attacked without warning, plasma bolts cutting through the air. The squad scattered, returning fire wildly. 2 cadets nearly walked straight into a camouflaged snare that would have hoisted them upside down. She stopped them with a single word: "Wait." She crouched, touched the dirt, and pointed to the nearly invisible wire. Then, with a flick of her knife, she cut it clean. The others stared. One whispered, "How did she see that?" She gave no answer. Later, when a predator lunged from the bushes, jaws snapping, panic tore through the squad. They fired wildly, their shots missing. She stepped forward, sidestepped the attack, and drove her blade into the machine's joint. Sparks flew as it collapsed. Her squad froze. Their breaths came fast and shallow, but hers was steady. They began to follow her without realizing it. When she slowed, they slowed. When she turned, they turned. Every trap she spotted before it triggered, every drone she destroyed before it could strike. Her instincts carried them forward. But the deeper they went, the harsher the jungle became. Storm simulations rolled in, heavy rain drenching them. The ground turned to mud, sucking at their boots. Visibility dropped, predators circling closer. The squad grew weaker. One cadet collapsed from exhaustion. Another broke down in panic, refusing to move. The scaled cadet shouted, "We'll never make it. This is impossible." She crouched beside the exhausted cadet, pulled him to his feet, and pressed his weapon back into his hands. Her voice was calm, steady, cutting through the storm. "Move, one step at a time." Something in her tone silenced the panic. The squad began to follow again, step by step, breath by breath, until the glowing beacon of the extraction point finally came into view. Their relief was loud, almost desperate. Some dropped to their knees, laughing with exhaustion. But she remained standing, steady as ever. Her uniform was torn, her face streaked with dirt, but her eyes were calm. When the extraction ship carried them back, the instructors were waiting. Reports were reviewed, scores calculated. Most squads had failed completely. Many had been rescued before reaching the beacon, but her squad had succeeded barely. The truth, however, was clear to everyone. They had survived not because of training, not because of teamwork, but because of her. The instructors exchanged glances. One whispered, "She carried them." Another replied, "No, she carried herself. They just followed." Word spread quickly. By nightfall, the academy was alive with the story. She led her squad through the jungle. They would have died without her. She's a Deathworlder born to survive. For the first time, the whispers weren't just about fear. They carried something heavier, something that spread even faster. Respect. Not all accepted it. Some cadets refused to see her as anything but dangerous. But others began to watch her differently. Not just as a threat, but as someone who could do what they could not. In the silence of her dorm, she sat alone, her gear still damp from the simulation. She knew the challenge had changed something. Fear still surrounded her. But now, fear walked hand in hand with respect. And that was more dangerous than either alone. The academy was no longer the same place it had been when she first arrived. In the beginning, every step she took carried only whispers of fear. Now, after the survival challenge, those whispers had changed. They still feared her, but mixed with that fear was something heavier. Respect. It showed in small ways. When she entered the mess hall, tables no longer emptied. Cadets still kept their distance, but their eyes followed her with a quiet acknowledgement. They no longer laughed at her, no longer mocked her as weak or fragile. Instead, they spoke softly, careful not to draw her attention unless necessary. Her squad changed too. The scaled cadet who had once mocked her strength now walked a few steps behind her during drills. The insectoid cadet, who had hissed that she couldn't be trusted, now asked short, careful questions about survival tactics. Their words were reluctant, but their actions told the truth. They leaned on her without admitting it. Still, the fear was always there. During weapons practice, she fired at targets with precise aim, each shot clean, controlled. Cadets nearby lowered their voices when she stepped onto the range. When she sparred in hand-to-hand combat, others watched in silence, half hoping her opponent would land a strike, half certain he would not. And when she moved through the halls at night, cadets parted without thinking, as though the air itself carried her forward. The instructors noticed as well. Reports began to circulate among the staff. One instructor wrote, "Cadet displays superior instinct and adaptability. Others show signs of relying on her presence in training." Another added, "Respect growing among peers. Fear remains primary motivator." Instructors debated behind closed doors. Some argued that she was too dangerous, that her influence would disrupt discipline. Others believed she was proof of why the academy existed, to find strength where no one expected it. One instructor, a veteran with scars across his face, spoke firmly during the meeting. Fear is not weakness. Fear is recognition. They fear her because she reminds them of what they cannot do. And in that fear, they will learn. The academy tested this idea sooner than anyone expected. Weeks after the survival challenge, a new drill was announced. This time, squads would compete directly against each other in a simulated battlefield. The goal was simple: secure the control tower at the center before time ran out. Her squad stiffened when they heard the announcement. Competing against other cadets meant exposure. If they failed, their weakness would be obvious. If they won, everyone would know it was because of her. The battle began at dawn. Dozens of squads entered the ruined city simulation, streets filled with smoke and debris. Explosions shook the ground as squads clashed for territory. Her squad moved cautiously, already nervous. But she saw the battlefield differently. Her eyes caught paths through the rubble, ambush points above, hidden traps set along the roads. She guided them with calm words, her tone steady even as chaos raged around them. "Stay low. Not that path. Wait, now move." Her directions saved them again and again. Enemy squads tried to ambush, but she spotted them first. Traps triggered, but she avoided them before they fired. Step by step, they reached the control tower. Inside, the fight was brutal. Plasma bolts cut through the air, walls cracked under the weight of blasts. Her squad faltered, their fear rising. But she moved like she had in the jungle, calm, sharp, relentless. When an enemy cadet rushed her with a blade, she disarmed him in a single movement, knocking him unconscious without hesitation. When her squad panicked under heavy fire, she positioned herself at the front, her body shielding them, her shots precise. By the time the smoke cleared, the control tower was theirs. The instructors announced their victory to the academy. Cheers erupted from the spectators, but most eyes fixed on her. Everyone knew the truth. Her squad had won not because of numbers, not because of teamwork, but because of her. That night, the whispers spread again. But this time, they carried a different weight. She carried them through the battlefield. She didn't hesitate. She's dangerous. Yes, but she's also unstoppable. For the first time, cadets began to approach her not just with fear, but with questions. Quietly, carefully, they asked about her tactics. They wanted to know how she had seen the traps, how she had stayed calm under fire. She never gave long answers. Her replies were short, practical. Look where others don't. Listen to the silence. Fear is a tool. Use it. Some cadets walked away even more unsettled. But others listened closely, their respect growing in silence. In her dorm, she sat alone again. But this time, the silence felt different. The fear was still there, pressing in around her. But beneath it, she felt the weight of something new. Respect. Earned not by words, not by alliances, but by survival. And she knew this was only the beginning. The academy had tested her. The cadets had watched her. The instructors had debated her. But soon, they would all understand. Respect earned through fear was stronger than loyalty born from comfort. And she was ready to carry both. The academy had tested her many times, but this time was different. The alarm rang before dawn, echoing across the grounds. Cadets rushed from their dorms, thinking it was another drill. But the instructors' faces told a different story. This was not a simulation. A fleet of rogue drones, training machines gone rogue, had broken free from the control system. They weren't programmed to stop. They weren't playing war anymore. They were hunting. The instructors barked orders, dividing squads to contain the threat until reinforcements could arrive. Panic rippled through the cadets. Some froze, some whispered about refusing to fight, but most followed orders out of fear. Her squad looked at her, not the instructors, not the officers, her. She said nothing at first, only tightened her gloves and checked her weapon. Her calm silence steadied them more than the shouts of any commander. The drones came like a storm, blades spinning, energy cannons firing, metal bodies crashing through walls. Squads scattered, screaming as cadets fell. Sparks lit the air, explosions shook the ground. Her squad faltered at the sight, terror pulling them back. She stepped forward. "Follow me." Her voice was calm, sharp, unshaken, and they did. She led them into the chaos, weaving between burning structures, scanning every corner like she had done in the jungle. Where others fired blindly, she aimed with precision. Where others wasted energy, she struck with control. A drone lunged, metal claws slicing through the air. She rolled under it, leapt onto its back, and drove her blade into its core. Sparks burst as it collapsed. Another drone fired, but she dragged her squad into cover before the blast struck. Step by step, she guided them toward the central hub, the control core of the rogue machines. But the deeper they went, the worse it became. Entire squads had fallen. Cadets who had once whispered against her now lay unconscious, some injured, some too terrified to move. She didn't hesitate. She pulled them to safety, pushed them behind cover, forced them to breathe. Stand if you can. Move if you can. One step at a time. Her words cut through the panic. Cadets from other squads began to follow too, drawn to her voice, her calm, her unshakable presence. By the time they reached the core, she had more than her own squad behind her. She had a crowd of cadets who no longer looked at her with fear alone. The core was guarded by the largest drone yet, a towering machine bristling with weapons, its red eyes glowing like fire. Cadets gasped, some stepping back. She stepped forward. The drone roared to life, firing a storm of blasts. She sprinted, weaving through the fire with movements too sharp, too natural for training. She leapt, climbed its body, and struck at its joints until sparks flew. Swiped, knocking her hard into the wall. Pain tore through her, but she rose again without hesitation. Her eyes narrowed, her breath steady. "Now!" she shouted. Her words ignited the cadets. They fired together, covering her as she climbed again. She reached the core, drove her blade deep, and the machine screamed before collapsing in a shower of sparks. Silence followed. Then, slowly, cadets began to cheer. The alarms stopped. The rogue drones shut down. The academy stood in stunned relief. When the dust settled, the instructors gathered reports. Every file, every recording, every witness pointed to one truth. They had survived because of her. Not the strongest cadets, not the newest weapons. Her. The next day, the academy assembled in the Great Hall. The commandant himself stood before the cadets, his voice echoing across the chamber. Yesterday, the academy faced a threat not from simulation, but from reality. Many fell, but many more survived because of one cadet. All eyes turned to her. The commandant's gaze was steady. The scanners once warned us. They called her a Deathworlder. They marked her as dangerous. But danger is not weakness. It is strength. She is proof that survival itself is a weapon. She is proof that Earthborn are not a curse, but an honor. The words hung heavy in the air. Cadets who once whispered now stood silent. Instructors who had doubted now nodded with respect. The commandant's final words cut through the hall. Status: Earthborn Cadet. Designation: Alpha. For a long moment silence held. Then applause broke out, rolling like thunder. Not fear, not whispers, applause. She stood in the center of it all, calm as ever. Her eyes did not seek glory. Her lips did not smile. She simply stood, steady, unshaken, carrying the weight of both fear and respect, because she knew what they were only now learning. Being a Deathworlder was not a curse. It was a truth. And now it was her badge of honor.